Hi everyone, my name is Monique.
And I'm Naveen from Before You Play.
And today, in preparation for our two-part Anachrony series, we are going to be reboxing the Infinity Box.
Yes, this is a very big box that includes basically everything Anachrony possible. This game is published by Mindclash Games, and we did a similar video that's going to be kind of like this, which was Dracarion. So if you want to check that out, it's up here. And basically, we're just going to be talking about all the things that go in here because it can be kind of confusing. So this makes it easier for everybody else.
Yes, and one of the main reasons why we're doing this is because if you own Anachrony, depending on when you actually picked it up, your version of the game might be very different from ours in terms of the modules and expansions that it came with. And so just to kind of give you a bit of a timeline, I believe the first time Anachrony was released was a Kickstarter. There were two Kickstarters. The first one was in, I believe, 2016.
2016 with the 2017 release, I believe.
Yes, and that was for the base game as well as some of the expansion modules. If you were to pick up Anachrony now, everything in this box actually comes separately. And so the base game now comes in this this Essential Edition. And you could just pick up just this and not have any of the Exo Suits or any of the modular expansions, anything like that. And so if you backed Anachrony during the first Kickstarter, you most likely received the base game, which is this, as well as some of the modular expansions that came as either stretch goals or part of the boxes that were included. And so after the fact, they took all of those modular expansions and they put them into what is now known as the Classic Expansion Pack. So again, if you just have the Essential Edition, then you most likely do not have any of the modules that are in this.
Right.
And so for our two-part series, we're probably going to be featuring the base game as well as maybe another module from this this expansion pack.
For the first gameplay.
We're not quite sure exactly how we're going to do it yet because there are a lot of different ways that you can play base game Anachrony. That first Kickstarter, by the way, is where they also introduced those large Exo Suits, which we'll be showcasing once we dig into this box. The second Kickstarter was when they introduced the large expansion for Anachrony, which is called Fractures of Time. And that is what we are going to be basing our second playthrough on. If you were to get it now, that also comes in its own Fractures of Time box. During the second Kickstarter, they also introduced modular expansions similar to the first Kickstarter. And now, those are all lumped into this box called Future Imperfect.
There you go.
So there you go. If you've been curious about what all of these boxes entail, that is all of it in a nutshell. Now we can finally recycle
those, yes. And they are all technically like what stacks into this and makes up this Infinity Box here.
Yes, they are all in here.
They're in there.
The Infinity Box, by the way, was also introduced in the second Kickstarter. So if you picked up Anachrony during the second Kickstarter, it is likely that you have everything in here. But we do need to mention that we don't know what the stock looks like on anything that we're showcasing here, but we do know that a lot of people own the Infinity Box. So let's go ahead and dive right in, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right, this is the empty Infinity Box, and we're just going to be going layer by layer. There are 5 layers that we're going to be going through today, which is a lot of board game material.
A lot of content.
Yes, and so starting with layer number 1, we are going to basically start putting in the 4 main paths or factions that are included in the game.
Yep.
And actually, if you've never played Anachrony before, the theme is based upon this world where an apocalypse has happened and a majority of the humans are no longer in existence. And so 4 different paths or factions developed over time. There's a lot more to it than that, but we're just going to leave it at that for now so that we can rebox them.
Sure.
So starting with our first 2 paths, we have the Path of Salvation. And so each player actually has all of their own player stuff or components
there you go.
in each of these containers. So if you choose to be the Path of Salvation, everything that you need is in here. In this game, there are these Exo Suits, which you need to put people or scientists in order to send them out into the Earth.
To take actions.
Yeah, because the Earth is the conditions are rough.
It's a dangerous place.
It is. So you now need these suits. And the suits are going to look different depending on which faction you're playing as. And then all of the cards and such are in here. And this will all make more sense as we do the playthroughs.
Yeah, so these are player-specific pieces here.
Yes. So this is the Path of Salvation. Actually, I forgot this. All right. So there you go. That is the first player faction.
Sure. Yeah, we have the Path of Dominance. So they're pretty mean.
So let's just show off what the mechs look like, because I already mentioned that they all look different. So they all have thematic implementations and some asymmetry to them. So this is what the Path of Dominance looks like.
Yeah.
They're sort of alien-like in their mech appearance. Now, depending on which version of the game that you have, for example, if you have the Essential Edition and you didn't pick up the Exo Suits, then you might not have those miniatures. So just so you know, that's not going to come with every version of the game. And the last part of this first layer is actually not one of the factions. This is one of the modular expansions that came with the first Kickstarter. It's called the Guardians of the Council. Right. So that's what this tray is. You may or may not play with it when you play the base game, but it is an option. And this is just going to go at the very bottom over here.
Yep.
All right, moving on to the second layer, we have the rest of the player paths. So I have here the Path of Harmony. It's the green player.
Yeah.
And let's just kind of show what the mechs look like. This is this is what it looks like. I think it looks like almost like a tree trunk in texture.
Yeah.
Right? So that is the green player. They're supposed to be like a more peaceful faction. So I'm just going to go ahead and put them
There's no real
here.
war in the game, but
yes, it's a Euro game.
It's a Euro game,
definitely. Yeah. And then
All
we
right.
have the fourth one.
We have the Path of Progress. So let's go ahead and take that off.
The yellow player.
There you are. They're like lions.
Yeah, they have wings. Their mechs have wings.
Yeah, they're like Goldar.
So I don't know. I don't think there's like a book or a graphic novel to accompany this, but they could definitely make one with all this lore.
Definitely.
Right?
So we can put that right in here, just like that.
It's not the same.
Oh, thank you.
All right. And finally, we have the last path. And I believe the Path of Unity, which is what this is called, is from Fractures of Time. So we're not too familiar with the expansion content, although we will be exploring it shortly. And this is what the mech looks like.
Whoa.
Wow. It's almost like a hybrid, but it's very textured.
Yeah.
It's very sort of patterned. So there you go. That is the purple player. This will go right up top, just like that. All right, moving on to the third layer. These are now all the trays that have resources and just components that you play with, regardless of what type of game you're playing. So starting with the resources tray.
Sure, we have upgraded resources. So these are like all metal,
Yes.
like that.
And I believe it's neutronium, uranium, gold, titanium, and then of course water, because water is a significant resource. We also have these, I think they're called energy cores.
Right.
But like Naveen was mentioning, these are upgraded versus the cardboard counterparts.
chits.
Really doesn't matter which version you play with, but because we have them, we're probably going to be playing with the upgraded components. And then these are called flux core tokens. And you don't use these in the base game, but there you go. So these are going to go at the very top here, like that.
Just like that. Very good.
Then we have one of two world capital trays. So all of these trays have a name. This is a world capital tray that houses the different workers that we're going to be using and sending out into danger.
Very important workers.
In this world. Yes, they're color-coded depending on what type of worker they are. So these are scientists, we have engineers, I think they're called administrators, and geniuses that act sort of as a wild.
They do.
And then I believe these are from the expansion. They are operators. And then up top here, we have the different breakthrough tiles. And these we will go into detail during our playthroughs.
Sure.
But they just go in right there.
Perfect. We're getting
you.
there.
And lastly, we have sort of a two-part tray. So at the very bottom here, we have the buildings tray that houses all the different types of buildings, because in this game, we're going to be building these out onto our own personal player boards to activate them. And they sort of act as like the engine building aspect to the game. And above that, we have the second world capital tray. So this is going to house just some random stuff, really. We have victory points, paradox tokens, block off tiles, stuff like that. And those are going to be pretty integral to the gameplay as well.
Yeah, and that locks into that tray below.
Yes. So let's just go ahead and cap these. And then we can move on to layer number 4.
Sure.
All right, moving on to layer number 4. You know, as big as this box is, I can't believe we are almost done.
It's a lot of stuff already in there.
Reboxing.
Yeah.
It is actually fairly organized for having this many components. So this is called the base game tray. It just has a lot more of the other base game stuff that we didn't already see, such as, I believe these are the timeline tiles.
How you get through time, yeah.
Yeah, it's how you travel through time. We have the super projects, which are really, really important to the game. It's how you can score a lot of points and really, really strong engine building component, as well as all the dice that we're going to be using. So that's just going to fit in at the bottom right here. And then above that, we have the future imperfect tray.
There it is.
So this is going to house the expansion content modules that were, I believe, stretch goals in the second Kickstarter. So had you backed the Fractures of Time expansion, most likely you have this.
Yep.
Because we're not too familiar with the expansion yet, we can't really speak on the components that are in
Right.
here. But
That is where it resides.
yes, exactly. And finally, we have the Fractures of Time tray. So this is going to house components for the large expansion that was released in that second Kickstarter. Now, we hear that the Fractures of Time expansion really elevates the gameplay, so
Yeah.
we are very excited to be featuring that in our second playthrough. But there you go. That is the last tray for level number 4.
Is that the penultimate level? then?
It is.
Wow.
And really, there's only like sort of a half level that goes into level 5 because it's just one more tray. And so before we place in that last tray, we're actually going to go ahead and place in the player boards.
Sure. Yes, we have all the player boards with the expansion content mixed in.
Yes,
There you
and
go.
so each path has their own sort of player board, and it's divided into 2 sections. One area where you're going to be putting in your Exo Suits to send off into this madness of a world. And then over here where you're going to be building the buildings. So it's quite interesting in layout. There's sort of a lot going on.
Sure.
But that is what a player board looks like. And we're just going to go ahead and fit them in right here because the final tray sort of squeezes in on top. This is the 5th and final layer, and it's really just this one tray. And it's a tray that holds all of the cards. So it's sort of a mix of stuff. You're going to be using these in the base game as well, but all of the cards in the game can be found in the cards tray.
Yep.
And it has a little pocket underneath. So that is why we put in the player boards first. That was a bit scary there.
You almost dumped it.
I did. I flipped over the entire tray. And it fits in real snugly, just like that. And then in this area over here goes everything else.
Toss it in there.
All the boards, all the rule books just fit into this space. Now, there are a lot of different types of boards that come depending on which version of the game you have. And so we're not going to be going through each one. We're just going to be reboxing them.
Sure.
And the main game board is actually quite small. Let me just open this up.
Folds up pretty well.
Yeah, it folds up really well. And when you open it up, it's actually quite small. It's not the big behemoth that at least I would think that it would be, just kind of seeing a game like this.
A lot of the activity happens on your player board also.
That's true. But that's going to go ahead and fit in right there. And there are a few more boards, including these ones, which I believe were from the classic expansion modules.
Yep.
All right, I think we've come to some sort of organization with these boards.
Yeah, now if you don't want to watch this video sometime in the future, there's always the tray manual.
Yes.
which
This is what
tells
we've
you
been
everything.
following. And if you want a proper way to store the boards, this is what it looks like. We just kind of try to puzzle piece
There
and
was like
see.
5 layers of
what works.
components and then like 5 layers of boards.
Yeah,
So
the boards were probably the hardest part.
works. And then we have all the various rule books in
Yes.
the game.
Including
Yep.
a solo rule book. So if you're interested in playing something like this solo, they do have its own specific rule book for that. And of course, this is a game, I don't know if we mentioned this, but this game is designed by David Turczi
Right.
with Viktor Peter and Richard Amann.
Right.
And David Turczi, if you're not familiar, is very well known for his solo modes. So I've never played Anachrony solo before, but something to consider. And then on top of all of this,
Ah, yes, the lid.
we are done.
Boom.
It's been reboxed.
Woo!
Well, there you go. That is Anachrony, the Infinity Box. Like we were mentioning at the start of the video, we're going to be embarking on a 2-part series that includes 2 separate playthroughs with our thoughts at the end.
Right.
And so for the first playthrough, it will be the base game with potentially a module or 2. And then the second playthrough will be with Fractures of Time.
Right.
So if you've played this game before and you really enjoy it, I know that there is a cult following. We would love to hear what your favorite ways of playing are, which modules you incorporate. Leave us a comment down below. We'd love to hear from you.
We would love to hear that because I don't have too much experience with the expansions. All I have is really the experience with the base game. So I'm looking forward to kind of playing and trying different modules out and seeing what kind of combination we want to come up with. Well, anyway, thank you so much for watching the video. We hope it was helpful. If you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, please consider subscribing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.